The Rainbow Cat. It was early autumn, and I had just ended my 3-year marriage with Tom Sullivan that summer. My parents had died just before I married Tom, and for the first time in my life, I was alone. Trying my best to start over, I decided to buy a house in northeastern Pennsylvania where my parents had grown up. I had never been there, but I remembered the stories my parents used to tell of their days growing up in the small town of Bear Creek before getting married and moving to New York. I thought it would be a good place to find a new start and try to rebuild my life, so I talked with the realtor and began my task of house hunting. On the first day, I was to be shown the first of 3 houses on a street called Bunker Street. I remember immediately being met with a feeling of absence and loneliness as I drove down the street and looked out at the houses. Are all these houses for sale? I asked myself. They all looked empty and not lived in for some time. As I pulled up in front of the house, I noticed the realtor was not there. Maybe he's inside, I thought, so I walked up to the door and knocked. Sure enough, I was greeted by Charles, the realtor I had spoken with on the telephone. He took me inside and began showing me the house. Immediately, I noticed his shoes. They were the strangest shoes I had ever seen, like something you would see in an old Martian movie, or maybe something a carnival geek could wear. What was this all about? Some joke? Why was he wearing those? But he said nothing about them and seemed to be completely contented, so I said nothing of it. As he showed me the first floor, I was taken aback by the many strange murals painted on the walls of the rooms. If I was to buy this house, those would be the first things to go indeed. The previous owners were very artistic, as you can see, said Charles. I could not help but chuckle slightly thinking about his shoes. They certainly seemed to conflict with his serious demeanor. After I was shown the first floor, Charles took me to the second. It contained 3 very old-looking bedrooms. As Charles showed me the first of the rooms, I suddenly began to feel uneasy. This is the master bedroom, Charles began. It's a bit small, as you can see, but as you are unmarried, it should not be a problem. I took some offense to that comment, but my attention was suddenly averted as the sound of scampering feet flew down the hallway. What was that? I asked. What was what? Asked Charles. That noise, I said. Like an animal. Charles and I examined the hallway and the other 2 rooms and finally decided that it must have been a house settling. Finally, Charles took me to the 3rd floor, a very large open attic. Large enough to be remodeled into another floor and perhaps rented out, Charles noted. After he finished with his descriptions and stories about the house, he began to walk to the stairway. Now, if you will follow me, he said. But I noticed something that Charles neglected to mention. A square in the ceiling that looked like it could have been a door. What's up here? I asked. Suddenly, Charles' stone face began to look uneasy. It simply leads to a balcony, nothing more, he said. I pulled down on the small door to reveal a small stairway going up to another room. I walked up, but Charles did not follow. I entered a small empty room that did indeed have an outside balcony. However, to my surprise, I noticed that the room was not empty. Sitting there looking up at me was a cat. He must have come in through the balcony, I thought. But there was something very odd about him. The cat was a variety of colors. Am I seeing things? I thought. What kind of cat is this? I took a step closer, but the cat ran past me and outside to the little balcony. I followed him out and was treated to a wonderful view of the neighborhood and the mountains beyond. Soon, however, I realized that each house on the block had a similar little balcony, and each balcony had a cat, multicolored just like the one on this balcony. I suddenly felt a great sense of sadness and a feeling of uneasiness, as though each cat was staring at me. I immediately turned around and descended the stairway back into the attic. Charles? I called, but Charles was gone. By now I was frightened and ran down to the 2nd floor. I made my way to the 1st floor stairway and stopped. There was something coming from the bedrooms. A glow. I walked slowly to the master bedroom and glanced inside. The glow was coming from behind the drapes, and then I noticed it. Those shoes that Charles was wearing were beneath the curtain. Charles! I called, but no one answered. Then I realized that there were several pairs of shoes, as though several people were standing behind the curtains. Terrified, I screamed and ran as fast as I could, down the stairs and out of the house. Once in my car, I paused a moment. Something was wrong. The yards on the block were now overgrown by grass and weeds. The trees looked dead, and it was completely silent. As I started my car and began to drive away, I could see that same glowing coming from the second-floor windows of each of the houses. I began to drive faster, leaving the bizarre place behind. The last thing I remember is glancing in my mirror and seeing that glow in the back seat of the car. Yes, that is the very last thing I remember.